Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, members, and welcome to the Wine Society's latest episode of a brand new food and wine online series called What Grows Together Goes Together. My name's Gil. I'm one of the event managers here at the Wine Society, and it's a pleasure to be joined by my colleague and professional chef, Paolo. Good evening to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
And as I say, this is a relatively new series, this What Grows Together Goes Together. And Paolo and I have set ourselves the task to pop that theory to the test. You know, foods and wines that grow together, that ultimately are produced together in the same regions, the same countries, often go, or the theory is that they go very much hand in hand when on the plate and in the glass. So we've set ourselves that task in this series to put that to the test and to see if it's true.
Yes.
Now, this is our second episode, as I said. The first episode, we looked at the southwestern Spanish region of Andalusia. Tonight, we've set ourselves the more I think about it, the somewhat difficult task of representing an entire country, that country being Greece, which is situated in Europe's southeastern tip. So there's a lot for us to cover with Greece. I'm sure you can appreciate that. You may well be coming tonight and joining us tonight. Huge lovers of Greek food, Greek wine. Perhaps you holiday there frequently. Perhaps you're from Greece yourselves, living now in the UK. Maybe you're joining us for the very first time. Of course, each and every one of you are more than welcome to join us. Thanks so much for spending a bit of your evening here with Paolo and myself. But we did struggle to get to decide on what the dishes were that we were going to do. I think it's fair to say. We originally, members, thought we might do 9, 10, even a dozen dishes, but we realized that's quite a task to do in just 1 hour. So we have selected 5 dishes and 4 wines to accompany that we'll sort of talk a bit and use those to explain a little about the culture and the foods and wines of Greece as much as we can. But it is such a complex country. It's got a huge amount of influence, historical influences, and a vast array of different dishes, different ingredients, different cuisines, and wine. So as I say, I'm not going to keep too long in that regard before we get started. But before I do go any further, a little bit of housekeeping. Members, if you've attended our online events before, you'll be familiar with what's about to come. If you are joining us for the first time, this hopefully will be quite helpful to yourselves. But just 3 bits of housekeeping. The first, and hopefully this doesn't come to fruition, but if you are experiencing any technical difficulties, any connectivity issues, sound issues, do please get in touch with Paolo and myself. We're not IT technicians by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll do our best to help where we can. But you can get in touch with us in one of 3 ways. You can email tastings@thewinesociety.com. You can use within Zoom itself. If you just go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a React button. If you click on React and then raise your hand, we'll be able to see that on our screen and hopefully be able to help with whatever the issue may be. Or you can message us directly using the chat feature here on Zoom as well. As I say, hopefully that doesn't amount to anything, but we're there if it's needed. Talking of the chat feature, we'd love to hear from you. Paolo and I have absolutely no problem in talking for hours and hours about food and wine. That's fair to say, I think.
We do that very often, don't we? Yes.
But we'd love to be, for tonight, to be a lot of interaction between yourselves and yourselves towards us and vice versa. So do please let us know in the chat any of your comments, your personal sort of journeys with Greece, with Greek food, with Greek wine. If there's any dishes we're not showing this evening that maybe you've got in front of you, we'd love to know about that. Again, apologies that we've not covered every potential option available, but as I say, these 5 we think really do speak volumes of the nation of Greece. But let us know where you are, if you've got any of the dishes, if you have any of the wines, or indeed anything else, if you're blazing your own trail. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions as well, finally, for Paolo and I, do please, for our benefit, pop those into the Q&A feature here on Zoom. That just means that it won't get potentially swallowed up in the chat, and we'll have more opportunity to see it and hopefully to be able to answer those questions as well. So that's enough of the housekeeping. In a few moments, Paolo, I'll hand over to you to talk a little bit about some of the ingredients, some of the different dishes that we might expect, some of the most popular, the most sort of recognized ingredients, foods, plants that are grown in Greece. But beforehand, members, I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview, a little history perhaps of Greek cuisine. It will be very brief, I promise you of that. But I mentioned at the top that Greece has a huge amount of influence, or has had a huge amount of impact and influence, both itself in terms of the cuisine that it has sent out to the world, but also what's been brought in to Greece via communities through the centuries from Europe, from the Mediterranean, and indeed from the Middle East. So just a brief overview, we cast our minds to ancient Greece. We're looking sort of 3,000 years ago. That includes the classical period right the way through to the Roman period as well. And at that stage, food was very much an important part, as was wine, in fact, as I'll mention very briefly. But the likes of wheat, olive oil, and wine were hugely important, even at that point, 3,000 or so years ago. In fact, the very first cookbook, I believe, that was ever produced was by a Greek poet, and that was in 330 BC, I believe.
That's right, yes.
So again, sort of highlighting the importance of putting on paper recipes and sharing that knowledge and sharing of ideas and different cuisines, I think, was evident at that point. I mentioned that wine was very important there as well. It definitely was. Greeks did not invent wine. They weren't the very first community to create or to cultivate vines for the purpose of producing a drink from it. But it is arguably said that the Greeks created the first culture of wine. So this sort of what we might in the modern day class as sommeliers or Greek individuals who kind of recognize the different grape varieties, the different regions and the different wines that were produced and sort of help to influence what people may indeed drink or want. So wine always played a pivotal role back then. It was also at that time that the Persian Empire, from a cuisine point of view and cooking, that the Persian Empire influenced a little bit as well. They introduced the Greeks to the likes of rice, to yogurts, and also to sweet dishes, in particular those that had honey or sesame seeds,
yes,
nuts, things like that. So we start to see that influence coming into Greek cuisine. Continuing down the timeline, we've got the Byzantine period up to sort of late 1450 or early 1450s. And again, the Byzantines, they introduced the likes of basil or feta cheese, I think, came in at that stage.
Yes.
And the likes of kind of nutmeg and things like that. So again, we're seeing a lot of influence come through from there. The Venetian Republic, very quickly, important because we talk about one of the dishes, in fact, the last dish that we're looking at, the Stifado, this glorious, warming, rich stew, that has its origins in Italian cooking.
Yes.
So there's that influence that came in at that point. And then finally, we've got the Ottoman Empire from the 1450s through to the 1820s, and a huge amount of influence on Greek cuisine at that point, in particular, likes of meze and halva and other spices. Halva, I was trying to say, how would you describe halva as a dish? That's a sort of sesame.
That's right, yes.
It's sweet, but you wouldn't call it a pudding or a
No,
dessert?
you wouldn't. I mean, it's a cross between being a pudding and being like a sort of a starter dish. Like they sometimes even use as a sort of a mezzi, like a tapas thing. So, you know, you can have a sweet in between savory dishes. So I wouldn't necessarily call a dessert, but you know, it's there.
Yeah,
I think you've just covered the whole topic here.
Very difficult.
Yes.
There is some French influence as well. The reason why I mention this, we'll cover it a lot more in our third dish, the moussaka. But we start to see in the sort of early 20th century a lot of French cuisine sort of influence, lots of Greek chefs who were classically French trained, who would then bring back that training, bring back those newfound skills to Greek cuisine. And actually the likes of moussaka, again, we'll touch on it, but has a huge vote of thanks, I suppose, in terms of the modern expression of that dish, which is arguably the most popular, the most well-known of Greek dishes. Owes itself to a Greek chef who was classically French trained, who introduced an element of a French cooking to the dish. That dramatically changed it for the future. So lots and lots of influence. One more point, members, bear with me, I apologize, before I pass over to you.
It's fine.
Paolo, one more little, and this I found when I was doing a bit of extra research as well for tonight's event. And I believe this to be true. I've done a little bit of extra research on it as well. But you've got a nice tall white chef's hat, I'm sure.
Yes, I do. Yes.
So it's
I don't usually put that on, but
you know,
I do have someone, in my locker just in case. Yes.
Well, its origins are in Greece. Are in Greece. You knew this. I didn't know this. But apparently it was the monastic brothers, so the Greek Orthodox monasteries, and the brothers who were responsible for food and for looking after the cooking and the preparation of food. They decided to wear these large white hats. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
To differentiate their work from the other brothers within the monastery who typically wore large black hats.
That's right.
So I thought
smaller hats as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I thought when I found that, I thought I'll throw that in. I quite like that as a little extra something.
That's
but members, perhaps you already knew. Maybe it's just me that didn't. But I certainly didn't know that before. Anyway, that's enough of the history and the sort of influences or some of the influences. But for more detail on the food in particular, I'm going to pass over to you now, Paolo.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I think Gil already covered most of the topics, about the history, a little bit about the ingredients. But as a chef, I just, love the sort of ingredients from the Mediterranean. There's loads of flavors in Greece of things that perhaps you don't find anywhere else in Europe, like the famous feta cheese, which is brilliant. It's lovely. They have great olives as well, and mainly they grow quite a lot of tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and fresh things that you can find in any sort of small market in Greece, which is great. They have lovely flavors. They are nice and fresh, seasonal, and there's a lot you can do with these ingredients. As Gil said before, we have only 5 dishes here. We would love to show you about 15, 20. I mean, we tried quite a few of them. I love Greek food. Spending quite a bit of time in Italy, which is sort of Mediterranean as well. So there's great ingredients, lots of freshness, lots of flavors, and also they make some nice wine as well with you, don't they? Which it doesn't necessarily have to go with Greek recipes, but it's nice to mention that there's a lot of freshness in there, and I love it as a chef, and there's loads of dishes that you can make with these fresh ingredients, and we've chosen 5 very traditional dishes, didn't we, Gil? Because we went through a lot of cookbooks and stuff like that, and up to some point I think we sort of got a little bit confused in what to show, because there's so much. Yes. There's so much to show. So we decided to show 5 traditional dishes. Gil is going to explain in a minute what we're doing here. And we also have some really lovely wine here. So I must say that Gil, you nailed it again.
Now you can't say that at the beginning before we've tasted these again, and before we've got everybody's thoughts as well. Because I've just had a quick look at the chat as you were talking there as well, and it looks like lots of you are joining us with some of these dishes. Some of the wines you've been cooking all day, according to a few. So there's wonderful flavors and aromas, I'm sure, going on in your rooms, in your homes right now. So I would say I'm envious, but I've got them all here as well, if I'm honest. We've got the plates all around us. And so I think at this point, let's get straight into then that first dish.
That's right.
So the Horiatiki, am I right? The Greek salad.
That's right.
Yes.
Very traditional, very fresh.
Yes.
It changed through the years. People do some different ingredients sometimes. We've chosen a very traditional one, Gil, with some very fresh tomatoes, red onions, green peppers, black olives. There's quite a bit of dried oregano in there as well. A very good extra virgin olive oil. And I've put some red wine vinegar on my sauce as well. So there's a lot of freshness in there.
Members, I've popped on the screen as well. This is quite literally our bowl that we've got in front of us.
Yes.
A photo taken only moments before the beginning here, rather than try and show the image on the screen. So as you mentioned there, tomatoes, cucumber.
Yes, I mean, you can have a sprig of mint in there, would bring a lot of freshness, but it depends, your taste really. We decided to do without it, but a nice sprig of mint in there would be great as well. And as I said, fresh ingredients. I'm afraid I don't think this could be done in advance, because ingredients lose their freshness sometimes, especially when you put vinegar and olive oil on it. So it's a very simple salad. If you have the ingredients on hand, it'll take you 5-10 minutes to make, and I'm sure you will enjoy it, a lot, because it's nice and fresh.
And it's got such vibrancy, I think, in the color, in the flavor.
Yes.
It's got a lovely texture. There's crunch. There's a wonderful herbal note. You mentioned oregano as well. And of course, oregano is a herb that originates, I believe, from Greece as well.
It did, yes.
So we tend to think of mint and basil, and thyme as well as other herbs. They're very synonymous with Greece as well as other countries. But I believe I'm safe to say that oregano originates in Greece.
Yes.
In fact, I think, again, you can correct me on this one. It's believe that it was created by Aphrodite, the goddess Aphrodite.
That's right. Yes.
And
yes.
so, and the Greek names oregano, oro meaning joy, and ganos meaning
Yes.
and ganos meaning mountains. That kind of joyous
That's
mountain.
right.
So yes, it's got that wonderful crunch and, as I said, that vibrancy.
Yes.
Feta cheese as well, that tanginess that we get in there. But obviously, our dish, and as we would know this particular dish now, and this salad, we feel that it's always got tomato. Tomato is a staple of it. But of course, it wouldn't have originally. So this was an ancient Greek
It has been
salad,
changed through the years, yes.
but it was only in the 1600s, I think, that tomatoes would have been introduced to Europe.
Yes.
So from that point on, but this was I think it's known as a kind of, was it a peasant's salad or a village salad? So it was a case of, we've got all these ingredients just growing in our gardens.
Mainly, like, no, it doesn't mean actually leftovers, but what you have in your fridge. And it's a great combination. I mean, you know, it couldn't be any fresher than that, really. You know, when you think about a starter, freshness, summertime, I always think about a Greek salad because it's a great start.
Yes, absolutely. So with that, with a dish that has all that vibrancy, all that freshness, all that herbal character, we need a wine that can stand up to that. We need a wine that matches that. It's full of flavor, perhaps even with a little bit of a herbal character to itself. And so that is, I hope, what we have. And I'm just going to share my screen, members, just to give us, this is the first time you'll see this map, but it won't be the last time we see this map on tonight's event. So here's a map of Greece. There's wider areas there, of course. We can see Turkey to the east, and we've got Bulgaria, North Macedonia, and Albania up to the north as well, not to be confused with the Greek region of Macedonia, which we will cover with the final wine this evening as well. But we can see here, this is the full map of the wine producing regions as well. Members, I hope you can see my cursor. I'm just going to hover over Crete, which is this lovely large island down in the south of Greece. Certainly, well, actually, it's not just Greece's most southerly region, it's Europe's most southerly wine growing region. A large island that is pretty much sort of broken up by mountain ranges running west to east. It's a very I think Greece itself is something like the third most mountainous region of Europe or country of Europe.
Yes.
That could be wrong. Members tell me if I've got that wrong. But certainly Crete is very mountainous, and those mountain ranges cut from west to east. And it really creates a very different climatic region, sort of between north, south, east, and west as well. So it's warmer, it's drier in the east. It's that bit wetter and cooler towards the west. The southern area of Crete is very hot, very dry. It's got lots of hot winds coming in from North Africa. And then the north of the region is that little bit cooler. So I suppose saying that and describing the different climatic zones, it may be no surprise to us to hear that the majority of the vineyards are on the east and the northern end of the island of Crete. And so to our wine, I would just hover a little bit more here. Members, hopefully you can see it. This area here called Heraklion, that's the financial hub, that's the main city towards the eastern half of the island. And it is the financial hub of the island. It's also where the most important port can be found on the Isle of Crete. And that is where our first wine, let me just run quickly here. Hopefully this works. Perfect. So that is where our first wine of the evening comes from. So there's Daphne from Domaine Lyriakis. And this is a white wine. The grape variety is Daphne. I'll come back onto that in a moment. But Lyriakis, as a producer, they're based just south of the city of Heraklion. So they're not towards the coast. They're a little bit more further inland, up in the foothills of the mountains. We're looking at topography here at elevation around 440 meters above sea level. So that's crucial. That's one part of why this vineyard site is crucial, the production of high quality wines. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned, whilst we are on the east, where it is warmer, it is a bit drier than the west, and we're towards the northern half of the mountain range, so it's not as hot as the south. It is still quite warm. It is still dry. And so what we're looking for here in these higher altitudes is in the evening, there's a lovely cooling breeze that comes down from the mountains overnight, almost kind of puts these grapes in the fridge for a little bit, just delays the ripening, just slows everything down, and gives the grapes that chance to really retain their freshness, their acidity, their aromatic profile as well, which is something that's critical for high quality. What I'll do quickly now is also just show, this is the kind of the terrain I'm talking about. So we can see there's lovely rolling hills and various peaks and aspects. which I just think is a fantastic image of the island.
It is indeed, yes.
Another crucial part here as well is the soils within Crete. So we've got clay and limestone soils. Both retain moisture very well.
Yes.
So both sort of allow that retention during the dry seasons, allow that to seep back up through the roots and much needed water into the vines. But limestone in particular also excellent drainage. So if there are any sort of huge downpours, it doesn't flood the area, and we're able to have that free drainage of water. Crucially as well with clay is it takes a bit longer to warm up. So we've got those, it's slightly cooler. Again, it prolongs the growing season, just extends it that little bit more. So if I stop sharing for a moment, and then I can come back to where we are, which looks like we're in a vineyard as well. This one
that's a great view, actually. Yes.
But Domaine Lyriakis, the producer themselves, they're a family-run estate. They're into the second generation. They founded in 1966, and right from the very, very beginning, their ethos was to champion their indigenous grape varieties. So grape varieties local to Crete, not just to Greece, but to Crete itself. And their portfolio now has about 11 or so, I think it's 11 different indigenous grape varieties within their portfolio. They're also crucially responsible, or certainly in large part responsible, for the saving from a potentially commercially extinct, if not fully extinct, 3 different grape varieties,
right?
Of which one is this grape, Daphne, that we have in the glass right now. So I was really looking and hoping that we'd be able to show this wine and that it would pair with a dish, because of that wonderful sort of story, and the fact that we are saving, or they have saved this grape from that near extinction. So it's a white grape variety found pretty much exclusively on Crete. I don't know of anywhere on mainland Greece or anywhere else where it's planted. It's quite a very late ripening variety. So it works nicely here because it needs that extended growing season. So the fact that the elevation and the soils just help allow this grape to really ripen to its full and delicate, because it's also a very aromatic variety.
It is indeed.
Members, if you have this wine in your glass, do let us know what you think as well.
It's brilliant.
But I mentioned we needed a wine that had that aromatic profile, that had a slightly herbal character as well. And Daphne means laurel in Greek, and it does have that kind of laurel, bay leaf, thyme, oregano kind of
which
herbalness.
Is the main ingredients that we use on the salad, which it matches really well because the freshness of the tomato, the acidity from the onions. Cucumber, again, very, very fresh, especially with that little touch of oregano on it. You maybe think it's funny, cucumber and oregano, but within this salad, when you have the feta, you've got a lovely extra virgin olive oil as well, and a little touch of red wine vinegar. So it gives the acidity, the saltness from the feta and the black olives, acidity from the onions, sweetness from the tomatoes. There is so much going on in there that I can't describe. So so yeah, and the wine as well, again, fresh, full of flavor. It goes really well with that, and it's brilliant. It's a very good combination.
Excuse me there, members, using my spittoon just off to the camera. I hope I was off camera, but yeah, so it has a lovely mouthfeel. It's very full flavored. It's got a lovely bright acidity. It's making our sort of mouth water. It's got that character certainly to it, which is very helpful for the dish, cutting through all of that vibrancy. We know, we've talked about there, that all the aromatics, the herbal characters work off each other. I'm looking quickly now as well at the member comments. So we're trying to work out what the unusual taste and smell is. Ginger, absolutely. Stem ginger.
Yes. Sweetness and yes. Definitely
more on the nose than on the palate.
Yes.
For me, but definitely has that, and I love that. So that's something that I'm really looking for. Lovely wine, goes really well with the salad. Only thing missing is a balmy summer's evening. Yes, we've not got that here in Stevenage where we are.
I'm afraid we will get there eventually.
It'll come.
It's been improving, I think, in the last few days. So yes.
And we can taste some fennel. Absolutely, yeah, completely agree. I think that it's got such an abundance of flavor and character. It's a lot of depth. What I love as well about this grape variety, so it's fairly tricky. It's very late ripening, so we've got to have those right conditions for it.
Yes.
But it does in the right hands, and Lyriakis very much in the right hands produce these exceptional wines. But it naturally produces low sugar levels.
Yes.
Or lower than a lot of other varieties can. So even at full ripeness, it's got relatively low sugars, which means that generally speaking, typically the wines that are produced are never more than about 12.5% alcohol.
Right.
So in a kind of, I suppose, in a time and space where alcohol levels are increasing an
It
awful
has
lot,
increased,
that
yes.
for me is quite a nice, a thing I wanted to mention, that as a
Yes.
variety, it's got bags of flavor, bags of
Yes.
character, very full-bodied in that respect, but it's at 12.5%. It's relatively light in that respect. So hopefully a nice start.
Excellent.
And whilst you're talking about the next dish,
Yes.
I might try a little bit of the salad.
Why not? Please do so. And I'm sure I've been cooking all day, again, to make this happening. I've been trying, all the ingredients. We certainly nail the dish with the wine that you're presenting tonight, because on our way they have different flavors. We try to use different ingredients on some of the traditional dishes. So because it has changed through the years, all the dishes that we're showing here today. But yes, lots of freshness in that salad.
Yeah.
Wine is brilliant again, Gil, and yes, I think you nailed it again, Gil.
And I think you don't stop saying that. I love it. What also as well, so in terms of other wines, other food, rather than salads, it goes perfectly well, I say, with salads. Fish dishes as well, seafood would work rather nicely.
Yes.
A kind of fresh herbal pies, these sort of pitta, I think they call them in Greece. So am I right? And I may be pronouncing this wrong, but spanakopita.
Spanakopita, that's right. Yeah,
which may well have been. We were looking at doing that with that sort of spinach and feta in a phyllo pastry.
Yes.
I think this wine would go rather nicely there as well.
Yeah, it's got quite a bit of nutmeg and spices on it as well. But I think, again, we've chosen some really nice dishes today. They are very traditional, but members can change them as they wish. I'll give a couple of tips later on, if you want to change an ingredient. You can almost make everything that we have here today into vegetarian dishes, vegan dish, because on the herbs and spices alone, there's so much flavor in there that you can turn all these dishes into vegetarian and vegan
absolutely.
with no problem.
Absolutely. Having said that, let's move on to the second dish, which is chicken.
That's right. Yes.
A chicken souvlaki, is that right?
That's right. Yes.
So I'm going to pop up on the screen just a picture of what we have in front of us. But whilst I'm doing that, if you would be so happy to explain a little bit about the dish.
Yes, I mean, that's I think we're pronunciating it right, Gil. I'm sorry if we're not, but souvlaki. They say it's a sort of Greek fast food, which, to be honest, I don't agree with that. But up to a point, I do, because it's lovely. It used to be made with pork before. Cyprus, they use pork. We have used chicken here purely because all the spices, the lemon juice that is got in there, it adds so much flavor to it. You can do with vegetables as well. I would suggest that you can make this on the day before, because the more it marinated, the more flavor you get it. I mean, the salad on the side, it needs to be done fresh. But if you're using chicken or pork, you can marinate it on the day before. You can even put on a skewer on the day before. They do a lot on the griddle. If you don't have a griddle at home, a nice hot non-stick saucepan will do exactly the same. You just need a little bit of that, not burn, but that charcoal sort of color on it, so it gets all the ingredients and the spice together. I think it's a great dish. Again, Gil, it's served with tzatziki sauce, which is cucumber, Greek yogurt, lots of lemon zest, lemon juice, black pepper, sea salt. So again, it's a simple dish, but there is a lot of flavors in there. Again, you get the freshness of the cucumber with the Greek yogurt. You get the sweetness of the tomato, acidity from the onions. I've got some nice flat parsley leaf on top, and the chicken is being marinated with lemon. I've used a mix of herb called za'atar, which is, it's got oregano, it's got a bit of sesame seeds, black pepper, a little bit of smoked paprika. So it's all mixed in one go. I mean, you can use that for a lot of, different dishes. But again, it's a great dish, Gil, especially for the summer. We've been waiting for the summer for some time.
We're trying our best to will it along, aren't we? Certainly with the first two dishes, maybe the last three. We've realized what season we're in.
It's a great dish. You can have at winter time as well. We're having it here. It's nice, especially with the wine again, like that you've chosen. Got a lot of deepness in flavor, and it brings the whole dish up. So again, it's a lovely dish and a lovely wine as well.
So we're looking at the wine, as you say. This again, we needed a wine that had power, that had intensity, that had a great sort of round mouth palate sort of feel, but also something that had a little bit of salinity, had a bit of zest, had something else within it. I think there as well, just to help balance across everything. So I'm just going to share here and get my map back up. And we can see here, just where the star is placed here, this is the island of Santorini. This is where our second wine comes from. It's our exhibition, Santorini Asurtico 2021 vintage. I'll show the slide of the wine itself in a moment. But it comes from the island of Santorini, which is just here within the star. And that's part of the Cyclades island range, I suppose, that group of islands just off to the sort of southeast of Athens and off the mainland there. And whilst viticulture, certainly in many of the islands here, some of the isles are uninhabited, but many of the islands have had viticulture for several centuries. It's been widely, or an important element of industry rather, in the region. It's not necessarily the most important or first industry. That would be hospitality, I think. Yeah, lots of tourist destination, tourist hotspot in these regions. I've been told that watching the sunset, sunrise is something quite magical. I've not been there to know this. I've tasted enough of the wines, but I've not been there to witness that, sadly. But I'm going to just show now quickly the wine itself. So as I say, this is the Society's exhibition, Santorini Asurtico. And Asurtico is the name of the grape variety. It is from this region, from Santorini, from these islands. It's become so popular, certainly over the last few years, globally as well as within Greece, that we're now starting to see it being planted a little bit further afield of mainland Greece as well. But by and large, when we think Asurtico, we think Santorini.
Right.
And as an island, it's a volcanic island. I'm going to get another picture up just to show what I mean. Here we go. Oh. So this is Santorini itself, and it's a volcanic island. The last sort of major volcanic eruption was in the 1500s, which was fairly catastrophic. It created this sort of inverted cone, which we can now see on the image in front of us here. There's very little organic matter. There's very little water. It's all young volcanic soils. So it is, you can see from that image here, and actually if I show the next image, we can see this is it almost is like we're on the moon. It's got that sort of very little organic matter to it. But because of that, because of the climate here, because of the warmth, because of the high winds as well that we get in Santorini, the viticulture has taken on a very unique form. Right. So the way that grape growers, winemakers are pruning or trellising rather, or training their vines are very different to everywhere else. And we can see it a little bit in this picture, but I'll just show another that shows it a little bit more. Because this is what we're seeing here, this kind of basket looking shape. This is how the vines are trained in Santorini. There's good reason behind it, but essentially what they do is the new vine shoots of the new season are woven around the canes of the previous year.
Right. So it's the roots of the.
So the new shoots are kind of on that original cane, that 1 year, 2 year hardwood cane, and they're trained around and essentially then start to form these basket-like shapes.
Right.
So over time we get what we can see here. We call them basket, because they look very much like baskets with the foliage on the outside, but the grapes are inside the basket there. They're known as colora.
Colora,
is the term given, and it has a number of different benefits. As I say, the winds can be incredibly bracing in this region, hot and cold and cooler winds. There is a cool wind that is very important to the region, but the winds can have a negative effect, certainly at flowering and at bud break and bud burst, which can help massively reduce or hinder rather, and massively reduce the yields of potential yields. So it is problematic. This allows a little bit more of a protection with the grapes being in the flowers being inside this protective sort of cone or basket, but also it traps some of the humidity as well that's coming through on the winds, and so allows just a better use of the moisture, and they capture a little bit more of that moisture. And in a region that's as arid as it is and as dry as it is, any moisture is good, and any of that just to help. And so for the most part, on average, I think these baskets are typically kind of 10 to 20 years of age.
Right.
And then after that point, they're becoming a little bit big, a bit cumbersome, and they'll start to be cut back and start again.
Okay.
But the root systems remain the same. So we're not grabbing up the entirety and replanting.
Right.
So whilst on top of the soil, we might have these vines at 10, 20 or so years old. Underneath the surface, the roots themselves could be 200, 300, 400 years old.
Right. Okay.
So it is very unique in terms of that production. To Santorini, here's another close-up image.
Oh, that looks like a basket actually, and it's a lovely basket, isn't it?
a well-made basket there. And Assertico is the variety, the main variety. So it's about 70% or so planting to Assertico in Santorini. It's a white grape variety. I'll bring us back here now. It's resistant to lots of diseases. It's drought resistant as well,
right?
Which of course
is wind resistant as well. I would say it's sort of involved.
It would have evolved, no doubt, I'm sure.
Yes.
But crucially for this region, it's more drought resistant than a lot of other varieties.
Okay.
Again, a bit like with Daphne, it's a very late budding, late ripening varietal.
Yes.
And it's the third, as I said at the beginning, it's one of those great varieties that's gaining a lot more favor.
Right.
And is being planted around the whole of Greece now, much more than it used to be. It is now the third most planted white grape variety in all of Greece. And Assertico very much, whilst we can get that across the country, and it's fantastic examples across the whole of Greece where it's planted, Santorini is kind of its home. That's where we kind of originally sort of think of it being. So the wine had to come from Santorini. And as I say, this is our exhibition range, and it's produced for us by a chap called Artemis Kadamolegos.
Right.
Again, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing.
No, you've got a very good accent
there. But he's been within viticulture. His family have been in viticulture on Santorini for generations. He learned from his grandfather, and he's been involved already since 52, I think, so 1952.
Yes.
Took over the running of the estate in 2004, and actually that was also the year they released their first commercial vintage. And I wanted to choose this wine because whilst it doesn't tend to be aged in oak.
Okay.
We can get some outstanding examples of oak aging, but by and large, there's no oak. It's stainless steel, allows all that wonderful kind of grape-led power structure, that salinity, that citrus kick that it has, that zest, that lime and stone fruit. And so hopefully, as this will work really nicely with the Souvlaki members. If you have it, let us know your thoughts. I'm going to give it a little taste. You've just tasted it, so I'm now going to pass over to you to see what you think.
Lovely. Very nice, Gil. Again, full of freshness. Again, this dish in particular has got quite a bit of acidity in it. We had some lemon zest, lemon juice in the chicken, marinated with smoked paprika, dried oregano, sea salt, and black pepper. Again, tomatoes are very sweet. Onions, red onions we used, quite sweet as well, but quite acidic as well on the other side. And I think, Gil, the sauce that we have, fresh yogurt, Greek yogurt, fresh cucumbers, lemon zest, lemon juice, and quite a bit of chopped fresh parsley on it. I think it just cuts the whole acidity from the dish and bring the wine to life, really, because I think it's a lovely wine to go with this dish again, full of flavors, and I don't think it could be any better.
I'm seeing here as well. Sorry, a little message on the chat. Grown far apart. Yes. So I should have mentioned when we looked at the picture of the vines. You can see the picture behind us. These are very planted very densely in this particular vineyard. But yes, in where water is so scarce and nutrients are so scarce as they are in Santorini, producers aren't planting these in high density plantings because they would just compete too much and there would be no success at all.
So they put them apart a little bit so they can it draw the
So-
moisture and everything from the earth
Yes.
as much as I can.
So far lower
Rather-
densities,
yes.
so it allows all the vines to have that opportunity
Yes.
for success, which
Yes.
of course is what the winemaker wants as well. But yes, good point, and thank you. And also, yeah, roots can go down to 18 meters. So I mean,
That's quite deep, isn't it?
It's quite deep.
And people don't realize that, you know. It's,
No,
it's
an awful lot goes on under the
yes,
surface.
yes.
But yeah, I just love that style of wine. It has such power, and yet also a wonderful elegance to it, and a lovely freshness. And the pairing for me there, the acidity, that tang, that sharpness, that especially from the yogurt,
And
I think as well with the
and the
wine.
charcoal flavor from the griddle as well. I think it's like almost like a burning flavor, but with the freshness of the wine, it just goes together.
Absolutely.
It's
Now the
lovely.
charcoal definitely comes up a little bit more in the
Yes,
finish,
yes.
alongside that stone fruit from the wine.
Yes.
So yes, I enjoyed that.
Love it.
Members, I hope you did as well. So those are our first two. We didn't really realize it until we sat down and talked about it, but they are two fairly summary
They are.
dishes.
But it doesn't stop
Perhaps
you
they've worked
eating
well
that.
today
Yeah.
in February.
Yes.
But the next three
They are sort of
are a
wintry,
little bit
aren't
more
they?
wintry,
Yes,
a little
that's
more
right.
autumnal.
Yes.
Perhaps again we could eat them throughout the year.
Oh, yes, definitely.
But,
Yes.
yes. But let me just clear this plate away.
I'll do that.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Thank you.
And I will share, members. Let me just get this ready as well. There's our third dish. And for the third dish, actually our third and fourth dish, we're pairing together with the same wine. That's why there's five
That's right. Let me
dishes and
just
4 wines.
put in there as well.
So we can kind of bring both in together here, and I'll show both images as well. This up here. There we go. So apologies for the picture quality. That's me taking that on my phone. But this is our moussaka,
Yes.
which, as I said there at the beginning, I think if we're thinking about dishes of Greece, moussaka's got to be in the running. It's got to be in the conversation.
I think it's moussaka and the Greek salad, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
they're most well-known dishes.
Yeah.
But there's a great variety from these dishes as well, Gil, that, you know, you can usually different ingredients. You can add your own sort of spices and flavors on it. You know, it's great sort of culinary to work with. I love it. And, you know, Gil is going to talk a little bit more deep on the wine that we serve with it. But this, I think, is the right dish for the sort of weather we're having now, or had in the last 3 months. Wintry, I would say. But again, you can eat this all through the year. It's like more or less like Italian lasagna, you know. Sometimes even in the summer they'll have like not very hot but sort of warmish, or even like pizza. Sometimes you can even eat it cold, you know.
Yep.
You won't get the same flavors, but you know, it's still you can eat all year round.
So that's moussaka. We'll come back and explain a little bit more about
Yes.
some of the layers within the dish
Yes.
in a moment. But also, I'll just share another slide. Again, if I can get this to work for me. There we go. Because this is the second, well, our fourth dish, but the second of that 1-2 combo with the third wine.
That's right.
And this is our Papoutsakia.
You've said that
So
right.
I believe
yes.
sort of otherwise known as little shoe. Is that the rough
That's
translation?
right, yes, because the, you know, the aubergine looks like a shoe here. It's stuffed shoe, more
Yes,
or less, the
yes.
translation, yeah.
Now, Papoutsakia itself is typically made with ground beef.
That's right, yes.
What we've done for ourselves, and members, if you've got that in the traditional with ground beef, wonderful. Let us know what that's like. We've actually created ours as a more vegetarian option.
That's right.
Which again, many of you may well have done exactly the same thing. But there's quite a similarity in terms of flavors here between the two dishes. We've got
Yes.
those lovely, the aubergine obviously
Yes.
within, but that tomato,
Yes.
along with the kind of the cheese and all that sort of richness.
Bit
and
of
warmth.
cinnamon, you
Right.
know, yes.
So that's why we decided we'd put them together.
Yes.
Yeah. Would that be fair?
It is fair, Gil, because I think we've done a moussaka, which, you know, it's got the lamb mince obviously on it, the ground lamb mince. And I think this one here, it's a great option for vegetarian or even vegan, you know, because these days, this has got feta cheese on it, and it's got a little bit of bechamel. But, you know, you can make, you know, there is a great variety of vegan cheese and vegan sort of milk and almond milk. You can, you know, you can make the same dish without knowing that you haven't used any dairy on it, to be honest, because, you know, they have great flavors. There's quite a bit of spices in there. Again, we've got cinnamon, we've got nutmeg, we've got onions, we've got garlic, potatoes. There's, a bit of feta cheese in there. So again, great choice, Gil. And I haven't tried. I mean, we did try the wine about 2 months ago when we did the tasting. But
Yes.
again, lots of flavors in there, warmth, and a really nice dish.
Now you mentioned as well, so please try the wine there. But you mentioned a key ingredient to moussaka, the bechamel sauce.
That's right.
Which,
yes.
Members, a lot of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with the fact that that wasn't how this dish would have originally looked.
Yes.
Because that was something that came in. I mentioned at the top about that kind of French influence.
That's right. Yes.
Is that right here?
That's right. Yes. Yes. They almost discovered this dish by mistake, really, by using some ingredients and mixing them, and it turned out that, it's a great combination of flavors. Everything goes with it. There's a bit of potatoes in there as well, which helps soak all the fatness from the lamb that we use. And it's just like the potatoes absorb so much flavor that it's a unique dish. It's a moussaka. It's a moussaka. You can't do anything else with that.
No, that's no going back.
You can't pretend it's a moussaka. It has to be a moussaka. So yes.
Right. Well, there we have it. So onto the wine. Let me get that image up here. Sorry, the screen's as far away as it is from me. I'm having to stretch a little bit. Here we go. So I'll get that map of Greece back up because we're pairing this, and now we've had our first two white wines, or the two white wines of our four. We're now moving on to red wines.
Yes.
With these final three dishes. And so the wine that we paired with both the Moussaka and the Papoutsakia comes from this region here that starts the area of Peloponnese,
right,
which is the kind of the most southern mainland area of Greece. So it might look at first glance that this isn't mainland. It looks like it's cut us away. Right. It is effectively, or it is almost a complete island, but we can just see, members, hopefully you can see my cursor, just this little area here,
which is outside the star,
north, just outside the star to the northeast of it, around the city of Corinth. We have that. There is a kind of land bridge, I suppose. There is that connection there, so that's why it isn't an island. Although for an awful lot of it, there's a lot of coastline. But also in that same area, so around Corinth or Carinthia, which is the wine region that this wine comes from.
Right.
So we're up in an area that's known as Nemea, which again I'm going to just circle here in the Peloponnese. It's this slightly kind of green-grey color just here.
Right.
And the wine itself,
which is between central Greece and Athens, really, is on that sort of triangle.
Yeah, so it's just to the west of Athens and across. And the vineyard, so I'll just move. This is the wine. So it's Mitravelis is the producer. Red on Black is the name of the wine. Horiatiki is the name of the grape. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. Because it definitely looks like I should be pronouncing the G's. But Horiatiki, I believe, is the varietal, and it's the only grape variety, the only red grape variety or red wine producing grape permitted in that PDO, in that protected appellation or area of Nemea.
Right. Okay.
So all of the wine, if it's labeled as Nemea, as this wine is, will be from Horiatiki as the grape variety. It is the most widely planted black grape variety in the whole of Greece as well. Okay. So it's of huge importance, not just for red wines, but for rosé as well. Right. It makes some wonderful, light, delicate styles of rosé. But in this instance, we've picked this as a red wine, and it's quite a unique red. So I'll tell you a little bit about the producer as well. But while I do that, I might just show another slide. So here's a picture from a vineyard looking out. So that body of water that we see there, that's the Gulf of Corinth. So that's that area that I was saying, right up on the north of Peloponnese, and we're staring across into central Greece, and we're looking at further into Greece itself. But the producer themselves, Mitravelis, they're in this sort of highly mountainous area. There's about 7 different mountains ranging over 2,000 feet in altitude. Right. Or 2,000 meters rather in altitude. So it is a very mountainous area. Nemea is high quality wine production. As I say, red wine.
So did you mention 2,000 meters above or 2,000 feet above?
Which is 2,000 meters.
That's quite high.
Which is quite high.
Which is about
I think there's
6,000.
6,000
Something. Yeah, that's quite high actually. Yes.
Yeah, 6,000, 6,500.
That's right.
There's about 7 mountains that have that.
All right.
But this comes from producer Mitrovelis. They were founded in 1828, I believe, in the region. They're the oldest family-led winery in Nemea. In 1913, a new winery was built. In the 1950s, we got 3 brothers who really sort of took it, increased. They took over the estate in the 50s and really kind of modernized. They put in some new equipment. They brought in a new winery, techniques in the vineyards as well. And it's gone from strength to strength from that point on. Around the turn of the 20th century, they owned about 10 hectares under vine. It's roughly about the same still. So it is a relatively small family estate, but their focus is entirely on premium wines.
Right.
Their son in 2003, so one of the 3 brothers, their son, Konstantinos, he joined the estate and he ultimately sort of took over the running of the estate and is in charge now. Soon after that, 2003, he released this wine, not this exact vintage, of course, but he released this red on black. At that point, it was the very first Nemea red that didn't see any oak.
Right.
So it's the very first Nemea, so that Horiatiki grape variety, where the wine's produced entirely in stainless steel.
I see. Okay.
So it was the first released in the Greek market, rather. So others may have been produced, but not released. And it just, I think that really comes out in the nose. I'm seeing members already as well mentioning how they love the wine. It's just so fresh, so vibrant and energetic. It's got wonderful plush red and black fruit
color
characters.
As well. There's a beautiful color.
It's got a great color. I'm not sure if that'll come through.
It is,
I'll bring it to the picture anyway there. But yeah, very juicy, very fresh. There's a nice cinnamon and nutmeg character, which I think will pair wonderfully with the spices in the dish as well, I'm hoping. But I wanted to choose a wine that had that energy. It had some acidity. It had a lift and a vibrancy to cut through everything that's in that plate.
It cuts through, but it brings all the flavor up as well, at the same time. It cuts through the richness of, the white sauce that we have in there, and a little bit from the feta cheese. But again, lamb has got quite a bit of fatness on it. It can be quite greasy, but because we have the potatoes on this dish, it sort of soaks up all the flavor, all the fat, and it turns into something very nice, really.
Yeah. So this is aged for about 4 months in stainless steel before then being bottled. And it is quite unique, members, as well. If you're looking at this grape variety and this wine, thinking I absolutely love it, and I can see some of us are, and I'm very much of that persuasion as well, as loving the style. It's not necessarily always the style of Horiatiki that you would find in Nemea. A lot will have a much more kind of a deeper, spicier, a richer character to it.
Yes.
A little more tannic grip as well.
A little bit more like oakness of
the oak coming through, because as I say, a lot of these wines typically spend time in oak. So it's very much, I would encourage everybody to branch out and try this grape variety and wines from Nemea again. And Mitrovelis is a perfect example of a producer in which to do that with complete trust, I think, because their quality consciousness stands out.
And the thing is, with the freshness of it, you can again drink it through the year. Summer, winter. It's fresh. It's full of flavors. A bit of spice in there, so it's great. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm seeing here. Sorry, I was also looking to the side. Lovely wine. Definitely buy more of this. Wonderful. Look, that's great. Great pairing with the Moussaka. Why have I never tried Greek wine before? I know. This is I suppose it's also Greek wines generally for us in the UK market. Still a relatively young market place in the UK. It's growing very much. Matthew Horsley, our buyer here at the Wine Society, is doing wondrous things in bringing the great wines of Greece to the fore. But yeah, I think absolutely Greece is definitely a country to investigate.
And the thing is, for me as a chef, I always think like anywhere you can grow fresh ingredients, tomatoes, anything, you can make great wine as well. Because if you grow nice tomatoes and fresh vegetables, obviously the soil will be good for wine as well. So
yeah. And I think the quality levels as well in wine in Greece has dramatically, increased and improved over the last, what are we now, sort of 40 years, 30, 40 years. Lots more investment coming in as well through EU and others. When they joined the EU in 81, I think it was that Greece joined. So lots of additional investment, and we've really seen the quality continue to increase. But what I love about Greek wine in particular is the fact that yes, there are international grapes planted. Yes, there's Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot and Chardonnay and others, but they've always kind of thought that we will champion the unique indigenous grapes
Yes.
of Greece, and that for me, that's not just commendable. I mean that very positively. That would have been a tough decision to make, and Portugal, I think, is another country that springs to mind who has done something similar.
Right.
And I think it's benefiting from it because these are such unique but high quality wines, great varieties that we're now just starting to get our heads around as consumers, myself very much included in that. But it's a fantastic kind of journey and experimentation,
Perfect.
I suppose. But
Yes.
a wonderful pairing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great.
Wonderful.
They just move this
You're
here
gonna
for now.
Look at that.
And I think we'll bring the last dish that we have here, which is a very, again, very warm, lovely dish.
And just before you go on as well, just saying, really stand up to the cinnamon. That's again, I
It
think I
does.
get that in the
Yeah.
wine, and I do think it comes through an awful lot on the
Yes.
palate there. And
Yes.
I love cinnamon as a
Oh,
spice,
yes.
so it works for me, absolutely. Really enjoying this red. Don't think I've tasted the grape before. Brilliant. Yeah, we love to be able to sort of bring brand new, never seen before varietals, never
Yes.
tried before varietals to the fore, and give them their I suppose their stage.
Yes, of
to
course.
really
Yes,
sing.
which is very important to us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But so on to our final dish. Let me get a picture of that up here now as well. Here we go. So, Paolo, why don't you tell us a little bit about
Well,
Stifado?
we got Stifado here, which it's look at it. It looks like a stew. It is a stew, which Stifado means steam actually. So people who, back in the days, they used to have potatoes, all the trimmings from the beef, and just try to make a stew out of it. Which again, it looks like a winter dish. But it's lovely. You can again eat through the year. So it's got a lot of spices on it. So it's got garlic, it's got fresh onions. Again, it's got a bit of cinnamon on it, a bit of nutmeg on it. And again, one thing that goes into this stew, which is a bit unusual, is red wine vinegar, because it needs that acidity to cut through the sweetness of the sauce that's made, because it's got a bit of beef stock as well. Usually they put a little bit of demerara sugar just to bring the sweetness up. And then again, just before it's finished, you add some fresh tomatoes on it. So it gives again the sweetness and the warmth of it, Gil. Again, lovely dish. The wine that we're pairing with it, Gil is going to talk about it in a minute. But again, it's a lovely dish that can be eaten through the year. I mean, mainly it would be better to eat, at winter time, the sort of weather we have in here now. But it's a great dish, and it's got potatoes on it again that absorbs all the flavor, all the fat, all the sweetness. Great dish, and it can be made in advance. You can make this usually, 2 to 3 days before, and just keep in your fridge and just reheat it. I think like stew, when you make a stew, the more you keep them, sort of cooked in the fridge, the more flavors you get out of it.
Yeah.
So, yes, great dish.
I think you've nailed it there. There's a sweetness in the dish. It's got a wonderful richness. And so with the amount of flavor and character that's in there, we needed a wine that was bold. Probably the most powerfully structured wine of the evening, I think we'd need for this. We need a wine that's got acidity.
It's got quite a bit of acidity. I mean, I was just trying it now.
Yeah.
And with the sweetness, because I said sweetness, the dish is not sweet at all, but it's got a bit of demerara sugar and the red wine vinegar, which it turns into almost like a sort of ketchup flavor, really, which, acidity, sweetness, and depth of flavor. And the wine, again, as you said, a bold wine. It's not bold at all. It's got a lot of flavor on it, but I think there's quite acid in there that it cuts through the dish again.
Yeah, Yeah. So definitely here we've got, so I'll quickly show the slide of this particular, I'll go back to the map, as is now customary in today's event. So we're back here. And again, as I mentioned, sort of halfway through the evening, we are now in our Macedonia region of Greece. So we're up in the north of mainland Greece, where this star is here. And we're in the area of Nauza. So it's in Macedonia, and Nauza is this particular region. So we can see this sort of sub area here around just on the kind of foothills of Mount Vermeil.
Yeah.
So it's in relatively high, or it's got rolling hills and varying aspects and altitudes. But for us here, this particular wine comes at least in part from higher altitude vineyards, which is critical because, as I mentioned with the Daphne right at the beginning, at those higher altitudes, you get some of those nice cooling breezes come down through overnight down from the tops of the mountains, and that just helps cool and prolong the season and allows that retention of acidity and of aromatics. And we need, in a wine for this dish, something that's got acidity to cut through. So that's where we are in Nauza. And if I continue, let's see if I can get this to work. I'll show you the wine itself. Here we go. So this is Earth and Sky. That's the name of the wine.
Nauza.
From Nauza. And this is Apostolos Timiopoulos is the producer.
Timiopoulos, yes.
And he is, there are many a producer who are doing wonderful, wonderful things with the grape variety. We can see just on the slide here that the Chino Mavro is the grape variety here. Again, an indigenous varietal to this part of very much to this part of Greece. And a bit like Horiatiki before, it's synonymous not just in its particular regions, but it's also very highly regarded. It produces exceptional quality wines. And this is the second most planted black grape variety, so red wine producing varietal. Right. We can also get rosé, but by and large, we're looking at reds. And Apostolos Timiopoulos is arguably, I mean, it's not a huge, I would absolutely conform to this. He is one of the leading lights championing this grape variety.
Okay.
It's a very tricky grape to grow. It's a little bit fiddly. It likes very much a very particular kind of soil and climate.
And atmosphere, yes.
An atmosphere. So it is quite a difficult grape to cultivate. Therefore, it doesn't tend to produce wines, or one of the reasons we don't tend to find this as a sub £10 category or kind of that sort of price. They tend to be that little bit more expensive.
Yes.
The wines produced, as we can see here from this particular wine, are comfortably the more expensive of the four that we're looking at. But Chino Mavro means sour black or acid black, which kind of highlights not just the color in the wine, it's got a slightly deeper color to it, but also that acidity that it's renowned for. So a lot of people, when they're thinking of Chino Mavro, if they're talking about what you might compare it to with another grape variety that we might be more familiar with, it sits somewhere, we often say it sits somewhere around Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo, so the Barolo grape variety of Italy, in that it has that lovely acidity that both have, but this also comes with, medium to high tannin, lots of power, lots of depth, relatively light in color against some of the other grape varieties that we have, but with a huge amount of, as I say, of power, of structure. It works well with oak. They can age beautifully.
Is this being kept in oak barrels?
This has,
because it does have the oakness in the end, which is great, especially with acidity and sweetness again from the dish. I think it just brings the whole thing together. Excellent choice again.
So, well, this particular one I mentioned, Apostolos, his family have been growing grapes for generations, not always commercially. In fact, pretty much never commercially. It was more sort of for local production and consumption there. It was his father, Apostolos' father, who was the first to grow grapes and then release commercially, or rather sell grapes to local wineries before ultimately, as a family, they're now producing their own wines. And Apostolos, he studied oenology in Athens, and then he came back to the family estate and has taken up the reins of the family Timiopoulos estate. His first wine, similar to actually our previous as well, was 2003. That was the vintage. His first, and actually this wine, Earth and Sky, was the very first wine that he produced.
Right.
And released. So that was the first
commercially
release of that, exactly.
Okay.
So it was released in 2005, but it was from the 03 vintage. And it's 100% Chino Mavro, as this vintage as well is, the 22. It's powerful, it's concentrated, and it comes from two different vineyards.
Right.
So I've got some pictures of the vineyards here that I just want to show. So the first two images are from its first vineyard, and that's the Trilafos vineyard, which is where the estate is actually based.
Right.
70% roughly from this of the fruit that goes into this wine
It's from
comes
this
from
vineyard.
this vineyard,
Okay, vineyard.
Trillafos. So we're about 100 to 220 meters above sea level.
Okay.
So with some altitude, but certainly not.
But there's 1,000 feet roughly, more or less. Yes.
It's got a higher temperature. Its average temperature here is a little bit higher than the other vineyard.
Okay.
So it produces ripe, full-bodied expressions of Xinomavro of the grape variety, sort of denser wines than the other vineyard. But 70% pretty much. So that we can see here, it's got some rolling hills, it's got some altitude, there's some aspect to it. I've got one other image as well. Crucially, what we can also see here, if I can go back, is there's lots of cover crop. Right. In between the rows of vines, there's lots of grass, there's lots of cover. So that helps build local ecosystems, habitats there for beneficial insects, bugs, etc. And sustainability is very much at the forefront of Apostolos' mind. So 70%, as I say, comes from here. And this is the warmer of the two vineyard sites. So it gives us the component that's the most powerful, the most structured, the most tannic, the deeper, richer style. The other comes from this vineyard, which is Fitia.
Right.
This is higher in altitude, 30% roughly here. You're looking at somewhere between 400 and 650 meters above sea level.
Right.
On here. So that added elevation,
feet,
we're getting much cooler.
Yes.
A longer growing season. And this is where we get a little bit more of a kind of elegance. So less power, but more elegance, more finesse, more acidity,
more flavor, more.
Still got huge amounts of flavor.
Yes,
but it's got that delicate aromatic character to it, and it's retained the acidity a little bit more. And I think that's obviously what Apostolos is looking for with the blend here, to have that blend of power and finesse, the structure and that elegance that these two vineyards, I believe anyway, tasting this wine, definitely show. Members, if you have this wine as well, I'd love to know what you think. We're talking old vines. I haven't really mentioned the age of vines yet, but this is about 45-year-old vines here. So the older the vines get, the less productive, I suppose.
The less grapes you get.
The less grapes, but the more concentrated flavor, more effort from the vine is taken to the smaller yields. So it is a very positive thing for us as winemakers. I say for us, I've never made a wine. For winemakers.
It's like us, Gil. The older we get, the better we get.
I agree. This wine as well, last couple of points on this, is it's seen about 18 months in old French oak barrels, I believe. So not to impart any oak flavour, but purely just to allow all those flavours to marry. Maybe get a little bit of a softer tannin feel as well. And possibly even a little bit of a smokiness and maybe some of those sweet spices coming through. But I'm really hopeful that that's worked well with the dish.
It has indeed.
It's got the power, it's got elegance, freshness, and we're left hopefully with a lovely clean palate with all that flavour from the potato, from the beef,
yes,
and those sort of dark cherry and almost a kind of savoury tea leaf style from the wine. I'm going to let you say a few words yourself as well. I'm just going to see if anybody's been trying it and what they think. We've got a question here. Sorry, what's the best temperature for the reds? So for the first red, the Horiatiki, we could probably we've had that at a slightly chilled room temperature, I suppose. The room's not warm, but it's not cold. Because it's unoaked, it's got that wonderful freshness and that bright acidity. You could probably, chill that, maybe put that in the fridge for
half an hour, 45 minutes,
something like that, just to chill it down a few degrees.
Well, between 10 and or even 9 and 12, yes,
12 to 14, 12, and that will just bring out a little bit more of the fresh berry fruit, and that will do it no harm at all. For the second of the reds, the Xinomavro that I'm sort of swirling around in my glass here, that I'd have probably a little bit warmer, but closer to, let's say, 16 to 18, 19. So not quite room temperature as we tend to see it now at around 21 or whatever.
Well, the room temperature should be what, 7 now, really? Yeah.
But somewhere around sort of 18. So again, a little bit cooler.
Yes.
Than most kind of modern room temperatures, gauge might say. But yeah, I think the first red, we can have that with a little bit of a chill to it. Another question I can see, how long will the earth and sky keep for? So yeah, this is a new vintage 22. It's very approachable now. I think it's delicious as it is now, but this will keep. Quite how long? Great question. I'll have a quick look at what Matthew's actually saying as well in terms of this wine. And then I could also say what I believe in terms of tasting it. But we've got this wine particular till 2030. So we're looking at another 5 years comfortable. I think with a vintage, easily 5 years, you could even perhaps keep this, depending on how you
A
like
little
your
bit
wine.
more, yes.
A little longer than that, maybe 8+, but in the very, very good years, and this definitely looks like it could be one of those. It's a wine that has the potential to last for over a decade, I think.
Excellent.
And yeah, it'd be interesting to see that development. I think we'll get much more of the dried fruit and that savory, the tea leaf again coming through, and some of those dried cherry notes rather than the fresh. But I think, yeah, it would be a wonderful wine to watch evolve over the years if we're strong-willed enough to keep the glass away and to keep the corkscrew away, which for me would have to be not in my house.
That's
I
right.
think I would just crack that bottle.
That's why
anyway.
we have people keeping wine here with us. I think
Yes.
I assume that
That's one of the reasons
yes,
for me anyway.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, there we go. I'm just looking at the time as well, 7:10. Thank you.
Thank you very
as
much.
well. Members, I hope you've had a great time listening to us and tasting, hopefully, a lot of these foods and wines with us. It's been fantastic to join you on this evening, to taste these 5 beautiful dishes, to taste these 4 great wines, to talk about Greece a little bit more broadly as well. Thank you, Paolo.